All right. Welcome, everybody. This is Lunch Therapy Interview Friday. And I'm so glad to be here because today we're going to really take a chance to take a breath and be well and maybe get off the hamster wheel. One thing I wanted to mention at the beginning of the show here today is I was on Ecamm Live. If you want to check out that, I had a really good discussion about how to live stream and using Ecamm Live, which is the thing that I use to live stream. Whoa, I'm really moving along the river now. So yeah, check that out. There's a link in the show notes for the show today. And let's get into this thing called lunch therapy. Thanks, Chuck. Great interview on Ecamm. Yeah, check that out because we talked about some stuff that was relevant if you want to, especially if you are interested in doing your own show or live streaming. That's the place to do it, or that's the tool that I like to use, Ecamm. Today, we are fortunate enough to have Yancy Wright, Todd Lee, one of our hummingbirds, of course, one of our well-known hummingbirds and roving reporters, hooked us up with Yancy. And Yancy, he runs a wellness retreat in Puerto Rico. You'll see some Puerto Rico behind me here. And he's down there talking with us through the miracle of the internet. And we're also going to talk about, let's see, it was easy for the interviewer because you spoke and kept it going. Excellent. Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate that very much. All right. Yeah, check that out. Show notes. There's the link. Hi, Kamala. Great to see people here. Yeah, so today we're going to be really focusing on wellness. We're going to really focus on keeping our mind right. We are going to breathe, of course. And we are also going to listen to some music. And then we're going to bring Yancy on here, who has some great insights into how we can keep ourselves vibrant and enthusiastic and creative and all these things. So let's do our breaths. Hello, Capiataship. Hoy. Great to see you here. Let's do some breathing. What do you say? All right. At the top of the show, for those of you who may have never seen this show before, we do 3 deep breaths, and we take this very seriously because it's important to breathe. And that was one of the things on the interview that I was doing that they were asking me about is what do you do as a performer when you're about to go on stage or you're about to be interviewed or you're going to be acting or doing something. A lot of times it takes, if you take the time to take some deep breaths, get some oxygen in your system, and also calm your nervous system, you'll be so much further ahead. Todd Lee is here. Hoy from the slopes. He's up there in Whistler, Todd Lee is. So that's the great thing about this show. You could be sitting on your chairlift and be chiming in, which is fantastic. Who knew that we could do this? All right, in through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. So many miracles occurring right before our eyes right now. It's bizarre. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. See, when we started this show, we meaning me, when I started the show with my assistant Boney, we breathed every single time before we went on the air. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. Emerald Express with Brian Keaton and Ethan Iswall. So I think he means Ethan Wall and Brian Keaton. Great. Say hi to everybody for us. Hopefully they can chime in as well. Let's see, Chuck Goldsmith. This would be a good show to pipe into our prison system to calm the inmates down. Interesting. Just tell them to breathe before they shank someone. Thanks, Chuck, for that. Hopefully they're keeping the shanking to a minimum. We're going to have some healing vibrations here. There's actually a site that they have. You know, they have multiple sites, healing vibrations. And they have one called Sleeping Vibrations now. Wanted to show you all that. All right, they can hear. Welcome, Brian Keaton. Welcome, Ethan Wall. Brian Keaton is a longtime skiing companion of mine when we were kids. You know, the skiing wasn't the dangerous part. The driving up there was the dangerous part with Brian Keaton because he is a horrible driver. Horrible driver. Don't tell him I said that, though. He'd be driving, snow would be coming down, there'd be ice on the road, and he'd be smiling and maybe not even looking at the road. I'm lucky to be here today, having experienced that. Fentanyl for the soul. All right, so this is Healing Vibrations. You can go there anytime. They now have the channel called Sleeping Vibrations. Hopefully you won't fall asleep because we've got a show to do. But I just wanted to point this out to you that this is a great place to go to relax. And also, if you can't sleep at night, turn on the Sleeping Vibrations. They also have a channel that's completely has no video so that the light won't keep you awake. But you can listen to their incredible sounds. Coming to you all the way from Seattle, Washington. Gotta ski, get off the lift, get it going. All right, we'll see you when you get back on the lift. Are they actually skiing? I think they are. We are all lucky to be here. We need to remember that. Yeah, we are lucky to be here. Especially those of us that rode in the car with Brian Keaton. Nice cereal bowls. Jose Salas is here. Hoppy Commando Friday. So I've got Yancy. He's all the way down there in Puerto Rico. He's at the resort, and this is going to be super cool to see him. Just want to do one more thing, a little instrumental from our friend Akira Ikeda. We had him on the show earlier. He had that beautiful outfit. But now he's playing an instrument that I don't know what it is. But it's an instrument in bowls of water. Maybe Yancy knows about this. I don't know. I'm going to pop myself on the screen here. Yeah, so I'll try to be quiet because it's a little low. I'm going to do some extra breathing, shaking it out. We are very much lucky. It's always good to remember how very much lucky we are to be here on the planet. It's great, isn't it? Take a minute, see how your body feels, check in. I like that there are people talking too. So Akira Ikeda, you can go to his website anytime you want. Tune in. But now we're going to go to Puerto Rico. We're going to go on a little journey to Puerto Rico, and we're going to see our friend Yancy there. So let's get into this thing. Jose says, I am so lucky to know you guys. A truly life-changing experience. Thanks, Jose. Hopefully, we're all contributing to each other's lives in a positive way. Very calming sound, isn't it? I love these I call them spiritual instruments. If you can think of any other spiritual instruments we can get on the show, I would love that as well. But hand pans and these things, I don't know what they are. High on my list. All right, let's get it going. All right. There's Yancy. Yeah. Hi, Yancy Wright. Welcome to Lunch Therapy.
Thank you, Joel. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me
Oh
on.
my God. We're so happy to have you.
Me along this way.
Yeah. So you're in Puerto Rico right now. You're at your resort.
I'm in Puerto Rico right now. Just to prove it, I'll step outside just to show off that I'm indeed in Puerto Rico. This is here at Casa Alternavida. We've got a little bit of overcast. It was blue skies earlier, but
Yeah.
we've got the rainforest nearby, so that's just part of being here on the island next to a rainforest.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you are now the proprietor of this incredible place called Casa Alternavida in Puerto Rico. I want to find out. We were introduced to you by Todd Lee. Todd Lee, you used to work with him, right?
Yeah, we worked together. I was there at Selling Construction for about 10 years. Todd was one of the executives there. Yep.
So can you tell us about your previous life and then how you got into this life that you're leading now that seems like, I don't know, it seems like a dream, a dream come true.
I guess I could say which previous life, but I'll start with the obvious, which was like a professional life in Seattle.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was working at one of the biggest construction companies in the state of Washington, great company, Selling Construction, and ultimately, I had a dream job. I created my own pathway and was able to become director of sustainability in an awesome company and work with amazing clients. I got to help Microsoft build their first green building projects, worked a lot on the first parts of the Amazon headquarters, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I helped oversee the green building aspects of that project for several years. A lot of like the first green schools projects and some of the first healthcare projects that were LEED certified. Had a really cool career helping shape and shift the construction industry. But what ultimately happened is I had a career burnout. Have you ever had a career burnout, Joel?
Oh, I'm burning out like every single day. Feels like it lately. I love I basically have two careers. So I have an entertainment career that I've been developing over a long period of time, but I also have a career as a computer tech. And I get so burned out because it's like I'm living two lives at once. So I know what that's like. Yeah.
Yeah, when we work too many hours, it's easy to get into that overwhelm and the stress builds up. And what I found ultimately was that I was in denial about being in a burnout process. And usually, like, at least from my experience, by the time I realized I was in a burnout, I was already burnt.
Yeah.
And the wake-up call for me literally was I had a sheet of paper handed over to me. I ended up in the emergency room. And on that sheet of paper, it basically said that the doctor in the ICU, she's like, look, your heart's messed up. We're going to have to stop your heart and reset it. Please sign here to not hold us responsible if you don't follow the process.
Whoa. And that was a complete shock to you? You weren't having like heart problems or anything like that? You just suddenly...
Yeah, I mean, I was having some weird kind of heart palpitations over a period of a year, but they kept saying, no, your heart's fine. There's nothing wrong with you. But what happened is all of a sudden I was at an event and I felt my heart starting to beat irregularly and my heart was stuck in atrial fibrillation. And so they shocked me with the defibrillator 3 times to reset my heart. And it was a big wake-up call because like most men, we don't think something needs fixed until it's completely broken. And I realized how short my lifespan can be if my heart stops.
And you were in your 30s when this happened?
Yeah, I was 37.
Wow, 37.
So now, 10 years later, I took that moment as a wake-up call. I lost my grandmother the same month to cancer, and I lost an aunt to cancer that both I was very close to. And I just thought, wow, I'm not sure that I'm fulfilling my highest life purpose right now.
Yeah.
And so I took a little bit of time off and came back and was like, guys, my heart's literally, like, no pun intended, my heart's just not in this anymore. So I took 6 months or something to phase my role out. And then while I took that initial time off, I had this vision. I was like, man, I've been pushing this rope uphill, trying to convince people to care about the environment. And ultimately, people don't care about the environment until they actually care more about themselves.
Oh,
So
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
we have this intrinsic connection to nature. It doesn't matter what political viewpoint you have. We can't really argue that we need clean air, clean water, clean soil, and healthy food to survive. I mean, there's spectrums of it, but ultimately, that is important for us. And I felt like what I was missing is giving people an opportunity to connect to themselves and connect to nature in a way that doesn't have an environmental agenda. I feel like a lot of the industry that I was in the green building industry, that they've been using this agenda of like fear, and it's just not motivational. And so I had this epiphany. I'm like, well, why don't I just create a retreat center where people that are stressed out, overwhelmed, have anxiety, people like me could go and just have a really nice holistic experience where there's healthy food, where they get coaching support, where they get connected directly to nature, daily nature adventures, and a little bit of a movement class and afternoon beach time, and understanding the culture through our team members that are preparing food from the land right here, and just a totally different experience than a typical vacation, and a different experience than just like some yoga retreat where you're doing yoga all the time. Something that builds a bridge between the corporate minded folks, the folks that are working hard, the folks that are workaholics like myself, that take a moment and reflect and like recalibrate if needed, and get support to create the life that they really want.
Wow, that is such a great mission to have. What made you choose Puerto Rico?
Well, I came here about 12 years ago for a wedding. Some dear friends of mine in Bellingham, Washington, Amy and Andrew Olive. And so I fell in love with the island when I came here. And then I also reconnected with someone I knew. We dated for several years, and ultimately moved here together, and then we broke up. But by that time I had already exited the company that I was at and sold everything off. And so I was like, no, I love this place. I love the people here. I love the land here. It's super abundant. I've never been in a place where you could literally throw your compost out and it grows into fruit trees. So I felt like this was the place to help people really connect to nature in a profound way.
Sounds nice. And it's also part of the United States, so it's a little bit easier to travel there, right? And probably easier to have a business there as well, I'm sure.
Well, that could be debated, but yes,
Okay.
as a U.S. territory, it makes it a lot easier than if I were trying to do this in Nicaragua or Guatemala or Mexico or somewhere else.
Wow. Okay, so now you set out to help people avoid burnout, help people rejuvenate. Did you train yourself in some way to do this?
Yeah, I went through a burnout.
Yeah, that's okay. So that's a good training.
No, so the first part was that, and then
First, burn yourself out, and then.
No, don't do that. The first part was I got to the island and I had huge aspirations to build a large scale retreat center, and I spent a couple of years here, almost getting to another burnout, trying to raise money and build this big vision. And I then had this realization that the deal just wasn't going to go forward for multiple reasons. And it gave me this opportunity to do even more inner work. So I was already doing some training, but this gave me a bigger opportunity to do some coaching training. And then, so I got a credential through the Heart Math Institute. That's 25 years of high science behind heart intelligence. And, there's neural pathways between the brain and the heart. And the Heart Math Institute discovered that almost 80% of those neural pathways are ascending. They go from the heart up to the brain. And what that means is that they're able to prove that intuition is a real thing. They're able to prove that our emotions start in our heart and then tell our brain we're having an emotion. So really fascinating stuff. That was a great coaching program. And then I joined the Hendricks Institute for another coaching credential, and they're amazing. Like Gay and Kathleen Hendricks, they've published more than 43 books about conscious communication, conscious relationships.
Yeah.
And so I've been so fortunate to have them as my mentors. And then once I actually bought a piece of property with an abandoned structure on it and started to remodel it, because it had no windows, no doors, no plumbing, it had been abandoned 8 years.
Yeah.
That's when, shortly after I bought and was installing windows, 2 hurricanes hit the island. Hurricane Irma, and then 10 days later, Hurricane Maria, and that flattened the island. I didn't have electricity for months. So that opened the door. I was super bummed because I'm like, man, are these messages that I'm not supposed to be here on the island?
Right.
But one of my closest friends and clients, Amy Lucan, she called me a cockroach, and I got a little offended at first. And she's like, no, don't be
I mean
upset.
that in a good way.
You're the most resilient person I know. All these things that have happened to you, and you just keep coming around. So, what occurred is the hurricanes opened one more door, which was Katie Hendricks was leading a leadership and transformation program. It's an intensive. It's a 2-year intensive coaching program, and she's by far one of the best facilitators, coaches I've ever seen. As far as quickly, you think Tony Robbins is good? Like you should see Katie Hendricks in action. She just quickly unravels like the core of what's holding someone back. And so I wanted to study more directly with her after doing an initial coaching program with them. And I joined this leadership and transformation program because the hurricanes happened. And I was able to be in California a lot, in Ojai, California, and work directly with her. And I finished that program, graduated, and they stopped. They weren't doing it.
Oh, no.
No.
You got it. You got it.
So I felt super fortunate that happened. The pandemic happened. All to be said, you asked me the original question was what kind of training did I go through? Those are the primary ones. I've done other trainings and done a lot of other retreats.
Yeah.
But work is probably the most profound because it's all about understanding the unconscious realm. And Katie doesn't really teach you how to become a coach. She teaches you by really getting you to unravel your own stuff, like going deep in a circle of people that are challenging you constantly and facing into a lot of your own unconscious stuff so that you can understand what it's like when you're helping your clients do it. So I've basically taken that training, translated it to the corporate world, and now do a lot of team building for companies, corporate leadership retreats, corporate leadership coaching. And some of those retreats are happening here at Casa Alternavida, and some of them happen in the States. So I'll be in Austin next month, and I'll be in California and a few other places. So that's kind of a long answer to your question.
I love long answers. So it's the short answers that are difficult when people are like, yes, no. Alternavida.com, that's your, besides your retreat in Puerto Rico, you also have these programs, right? Is that, so you have 2 websites?
Yeah. So Alternavida.com is the older company. That's me. I'm facilitating retreats and doing team building and consulting in the States. Because of the tax structures and all that, that's a separate company. And that's when I'm facilitating and doing team building work. Casa Alternavida, I also can do that facilitation here. Casa Alternavida is a literal place and space for leaders to come, to bring their teams, for even leaders that need a break from their company, that want to bring their spouse, that people that are stressed out, overwhelmed, have anxiety. It's a safe space for them to come and explore. We have some people that are having a career burnout, or lost a job, or lost a loved one, or maybe just want to have a fun reset, because we basically do this style of coaching out in nature. We may teach people about how to move through and express their emotions. I may do that in the ocean, or I may take them into the rainforest. But every day is a nature adventure, and then we add on these additional components to help people with their well-being. So
I love that you've tied in nature with the therapy, like you're saying, like get in touch with yourself, get in touch with nature, start with yourself. And then you can, branch out to helping the environment and helping other people and all this stuff. But you got to start with yourself and your connection to nature. What do you think it is about the human's disconnect from nature? Do you think that that's like one of the major problems of our human existence, why we seem to be spiraling out of control? It's because we've lost our connection to nature?
I love your question, Joel. Here's the thing. I'm also just finishing a forest therapy certification, but this is one concept in there. But this is something that I've believed for many, many years. we are nature.
We are nature.
We are nature. And if
Yeah.
we are nature, why are we separating ourselves?
I
We
don't
spend
know.
lives separating ourselves, driving
Yeah.
around in a car, building buildings, like separating ourselves. And what happens when we're out in nature is that there are all kinds of endorphins that release. We have a dopamine release by being outside, by breathing fresh air, by being connected to all this greenery. It actually opens up a lot. So I work with nature as a partner. This beautiful natural environment is my partner. It's part of who I am, but it helps tenderize people. It helps soften people. It helps them be more open, so they're willing to kind of go deep and help unravel the unconscious commitments that are holding them back from what they really want. Plus, it's more fun. Like,
Yeah.
who wants to go to a talk? No offense to talk therapists, but who wants to
Yeah.
go sit in a room with four walls and just talk when you can be outside, learning from nature as a metaphor while also unraveling the things holding you back from what you really want?
Wow. And what kind of programs? You have other people that work with you there. Um, do you do yoga? Do you meditate? What are the kinds of things that you do?
Yeah, so we don't use yoga, the word yoga, as much.
Hmm.
We call it mindful movement, and
Hmm.
so it's often a blend of qigong and some yogic movements and what we call sort of like a restorative movement, where our one of our main practitioners, Priscilla, she does like restorative movements, but also gives massage at the same time because she's a professional massage therapist, and
Great.
it's lovely. But we do that on the rooftop
Yeah.
while we're overlooking the rainforest as the sun is coming up. So it feels like you're literally a bird. And sometimes, like, one of my favorite qigong movements is the what we call the guadaguao breath, where you're taking flight, and we take people on a journey. So Priscilla is one amazing practitioner that we have. We have a couple of others that teach breath work, mindfulness practices. We do cacao ceremonies.
Wait, what's
We
a
also,
cacao ceremony? I saw that on your website. I don't know what that is. Do
so
you eat chocolate and what do you
so
do in a cacao ceremony?
real cacao is an amazing support for helping open the heart, for helping people connect to their emotions. And
Hmm.
this is raw grade ceremonial cacao, and it's a lot more bitter. We do cook it with a little bit of coconut and a bit of sweetener, so it's a little more edible. But we do a ceremony, meaning like this has been used for thousands of years in all kinds of civilizations as a process of helping create connection and build community. And so we'll sit down up on the rooftop again, and takes our time. Each cacao ceremony is different. It depends on the group, but the essence is to connect to your own heart, to potentially connect to your higher self, however you want to define that, and connect to the people that are in the circle.
Wow. And you also take whole businesses down there, or like
Yeah.
departments, right? You take them on as a department. And what is that like? What are some of the problems with people working together that you can kind of solve through these kinds of retreats?
Well, first, Joel, we usually brainwash people to take better care of themselves.
Good idea. That's a good kind of brainwashing. I like that.
No, in all seriousness, what we're doing is we're just simply giving them such a profound experience
Yeah.
through the high quality, healthy, farm to table organic food that's related to a cultural experience. Our chef Yvonne is amazing at like just telling people like the whole story of where the recipe came from, and she does a whole show and tell. Like, we're giving people this deep experience so that they're able to have the aha moment on their own. So what my joke about brainwashing people to take better care of themselves,
Yeah.
we've designed a great flow of a day of the movement class in the morning, the healthy breakfast. We take them on a nature adventure, bring them back for lunch. Then they have several hours to rest and relax. And then we take them to the beach. If they schedule a massage or if they schedule a coaching session, then we'll add those in. But that flow, we know, is the brainwashing where people are like, wow, I need to integrate some of this into my day,
Hmm.
because they be feeling so much more productive, they feel so much more creative, etc. And so with teams, when teams come to us, we work with like entrepreneurs organization, EO, We have some of the EO groups come, and so there's multiple CEOs. Sometimes it's a leadership team of a particular company.
Mm-hmm.
When those people come, I will curate a special program just for them. And I'll ask, through a survey, what challenges they're having, what potentials they want to explore. And from there, I'll curate this flow. Similar flow, but we're going to probably tackle a topic, say conscious communication.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they're saying they're not listening to each other very well. So we'll go into the rainforest, and I'll hand out these shift cards. If you want to flash one of those up, the one that's about conscious listening.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
And so conscious listening, for example.
Let me see if I can get to the conscious listening one. Let's see. Here we go.
Right here. So most of the time, we're listening through listening filters. So we might be listening while multitasking. I might be like, oh, sorry, what was that, Joel? So we're listening through these listening filters. And another one might be listening to fixed. People who, or like I do this all the time. Someone tells me something, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that, blah, blah. Or we're listening to defend ourselves, or we might be listening to avoid conflict, or listening to debate. Like these are filters that most people are unconscious of that are preventing them from actually being present to listen. And again, this is from the Hendricks Institute.
Can you tell us real quick about Hendricks? What was the lady's name again? Kathy Hendricks?
Yeah, so it's Kathleen, but she goes by Katie now. So Katie,
because they asked about that. Yeah.
I've taken and created these shift cards because I'll hand them out in the rainforest. And first thing I'll do, I'll be like, okay, so here we are in the middle of the rainforest, and there's all these amazing sounds. We have these little frogs here that make this.
All right, I like it.
Of them, and so I'll have them tune in. I'll be like, "What are you hearing?" And they think they're hearing birds, and I'll be like, "No, those are actually frogs." Or how many of them are you hearing? And what we often don't do is we're not in tune with our senses. Mm-hmm. We're just filtering all these senses out. So I help dial up their senses first, and then do some conscious listening exercises where we actually practice getting present, curious, waiting to understand, reflecting back our understanding of a conversation. And usually we'll start first with something really wrong. Like I'll say, okay, one person, you try on a listening filter, and the other person, you try to explain something that you really want this person to understand. Mm-hmm. And so we'll have them screw it up. just to demo that? The screw up? Yeah. Yeah. So for example, if you try to tell me something right now, I can just start practicing by listening while multitasking.
The capybara is the largest rodent. I'm trying to tell you something.
Hold on just a second. Yeah.
And it's actually a rodent, and some people have them as pets, but I don't recommend that you have them as pets.
It's not a rodent. It's not a rodent. It's actually a rabbit. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's listening to defend, listening to be right or wrong, listening while multitasking. Those are 3 filters that I just tried on really quick. Yeah. And so we'll have that exercise like where people get to practice doing it really wrong first. Mm-hmm. Because one thing is that most people don't think they're doing these listening filters until they start to realize they do it a lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even on this show, when I'm interviewing people, I'm looking at the comments and trying to put the comments on the screen and stuff like that. And sometimes I disconnect and I have the most inappropriate response. I'm sure I've done it today even, but because you're trying to multitask and trying to do all these different things. I love this idea. So then what do you do after you demo it wrong? Do you then try and demo it correctly or more productively?
They do it correctly. So, instead, like if you really wanted to tell me about this rodent, I would instead make sure that I was fully present, like we're on a screen. So I'd be, instead of kind of looking at you sideways or whatever, I'd actually turn towards you, be fully present, eye contact, and I'd take a deep breath and be like asking myself, I wonder what Joel has to tell me about this rodent. And so I'm in a curious mindset, and then tell me about your rodent.
So the capybara, I mean, it looks like a small dog, but it's actually a rodent, and it's the world's largest rodent, and they're cute as hell.
Wow. So a capybara, it's an interesting name, and I had no idea that it was a rodent. That's super cool.
Yeah. I love them. I've never seen one in person, but I would love to experience that sometime.
When you say the word capybara, it makes me feel like a little stuffed animal bear that I want to hug.
You should see their faces. They're so cute. They've got this big nose and they're all furry. And sometimes they will ride on the back of a turtle. It's just, there's hilarious stuff out there about capybaras.
Okay, so I'm gonna look this up after this. That was perfect. That was an example of you sharing something and me doing conscious listening, where I actually understood, repeated back a little bit of what I understood, and then had an emotional awareness tapped into it.
Yeah. So that's great. So what about these other ones here? And what do you call these slides? These are, let's see another one here.
Real quick, Joel, on one, a lot of corporate folks will be like, I don't have time to listen to that quality of detail.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the common response. If you flip back to that conscious listening,
let's go back.
That's the common response, is like, I don't have time to always listen that way. And yet, if we get in a practice to try to listen that way more often, there are far less mistakes that happen. And especially for managers with employees, they're usually having a much better connection and they feel heard. Usually it's less about, it's more about the person just wanting to feel heard. So, and if your impulse is to have a listening filter, like my impulse is often to fix, I'll now say, actually, I notice I really want to help you fix this. And I'm wondering, do you want me just to listen or would you like some feedback?
Right. So that's one of the things that my wife and I have been talking about a lot lately, is about like when you express something to someone who's close to you that you're having trouble with. And then when they try and provide you a solution, sometimes that's not what you want. Like you don't want a solution. You just want to be heard. And maybe you want the person to empathize with you in some way and be like, oh yeah, that sounds really terrible. I can see why you're upset about that. And sometimes that's more, sometimes it's much better communication than what we think it is. It's just like, oh, I'm going to try and solve that problem for you so that you don't have that problem anymore.
Yeah. Well, especially when we love the person, we want to help solve it. And there's two pieces to this. One is, if you're the person who's not feeling heard, it's an opportunity, rather than getting reactive, it's an opportunity to say, wow, honestly, I'm noticing I'm not feeling heard right now. And I do appreciate your effort to try to fix my situation, but all I really want is just to be heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other thing is, when your impulse is to fix, sometimes you jump in and start to fix something and you might end up with like not the best reaction back. So it creates a triangle of drama, because you show up as a hero, like, oh, I just want to fix this. Yeah. And someone like, get off me, man. Like, I don't need right now. I was just sharing something. Like,
you feel like then the person who's trying to fix it feels like they're not being heard. So it's a cycle, I guess.
Drama triangle, that's called.
What's it called?
A drama triangle.
Drama triangle. Oh,
yeah, where you have the victim, the villain, and the hero.
Wow. And you're like, I'm just trying to help. I don't know why you're so upset with me. Whatever,
The villain's like, no, you're not trying to help. You're always getting in my business.
Yeah, and that also happens, in work environments too, I'm sure.
It really does. And in work environments, most of this stuff gets swept under the rug. Like, that's what was happening for me, is that I didn't have these skills. It's not like we taught them in high school. It's not like we're taught these skills in college or at work.
We're not, so
when companies do hire me to bring this stuff into the workplace, the employees are super grateful because they're able to take it home and it helps their personal lives and also helps them at work. But at work, what was happening for me is that there were many conversations where I was feeling a certain emotion and wasn't able to express. And so that next slide of revealing versus concealing is another key one that often doesn't get addressed.
Okay, let's take a look at that. Revealing versus concealing.
Yeah. So an example would be if I'm in a meeting and it seems to be going in a direction that it feels a little contentious and it's not yielding the outcome that I had hoped for or that I'm seeing the others hoping for.
Yeah.
A lot of times people just want to avoid conflict, and so they just swallow their emotions and walk out of the room. But then there's tension later when the people come back together, and then there's often gossip, because then the people will go and talk about what happened and how this person's an idiot and that person doesn't know how to do this or whatever. Sound familiar?
Yes, of course.
So a conscious leadership approach would be instead of concealing your thoughts or your feelings or your sensations, would be to actually reveal right there in that meeting. And so one example might be for me to say, wow, I'm noticing feeling a bit of a wobble right now, and there's a lot of static in the room, and it doesn't feel like we've come to a good outcome. And what I'm wondering is if we just need to step out and take a quick break and breathe a little bit and come back and try this again, because I'm feeling uneasy in my stomach, and what I really want is a good solution for this client.
Yeah. Do you think we in work environments ignore our bodies?
A lot.
Yeah, I feel like more and more, and even so now with the workplace environment, because there's people are so careful about sexual harassment and things like this, we even more ignore our bodies. Like we can't even acknowledge that we have them, and I think that a lot of times, a lot of this stuff is going on in your body, like you were talking about your heart and your brain being connected and actually having a communication between the two. And if we cut off at the head, even in Zoom and things like that, we're cutting ourselves off so that we're just a brain. And do you think that's a huge problem or something that you can help solve?
Well, I really appreciate that you brought this up, because on so many, I'm popcorning with response possibilities.
Yeah.
But you're right. The majority of the time we're up here in our head, and we're just spending this time, like all of our energy's up here. And yet we have like 90 to 95% of our brain body is operating unconsciously, and we're not even tapping into it.
Yeah.
When we start to tap into our body intelligence, that's when our intuition can really start to hum along and operate in such a higher level. That's when we can listen to a quick sensation in our body and have an answer instead of analysis paralysis that happens in our head.
Oh, yeah.
We sit majority of the time in our offices. We're sitting in chairs that are computers hunched over, like all of our energy's up here. We're ignoring our bodies, and our bodies are like, dude, you've been sitting for 2 hours. You need to get up and move around. Like, go move around for a little bit.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
We are no longer connected to nature. We're no longer connected to our bodies. So when people come to visit us at Casa Alternavida, that's why it's so important for us to start with a movement class, then to take people out in nature. When we're like bouldering over rocks in a river, it's a game changer for people. They're sort of wobbling. They're indecisive. These are like CEOs of companies, and they're having a hard time deciding, should I take this step? Should I not?
Yeah.
And how does that play out in life? Well, it plays out in life because when we're not confident in our whole body, we're not able to make decisions as easily. Yeah. And so it's this mind-body connection. And from the Heart Math Institute, they would say, we need to be in coherence more. And coherence is this balance between the head, the heart, and the body. And there's a breathing technique. So when you do your breathing in the beginning of the show, try this one. You can actually breathe into your stomach and fill your belly at a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, filling up your belly, and an out breath at a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And with your next in breath, I want you to breathe in love and compassion and appreciation to your heart space, filling up your belly with love and compassion and appreciation. And with your out breath, breathe out any fear and doubt that might be lingering in your system. And so what the Heart Math Institute has found is that in-breath at a count of 5 and an out-breath at a count of 5 actually brings your head, your heart, and your body into coherence. There's more to that technique, but in simple terms, I just wanted to highlight this idea of coherence because we're pretty out of touch with our body. And so getting in tune and balancing those things out, we can be far more productive. We can be more in a higher state of joy. We can actually solve problems much quicker. And yet we continue to move along in this pattern of like working hard, working long hours, staying seated, all the things that erode our productivity and erode our creativity.
Wow, this is so mind-blowing, as far as that goes, because I think a lot of us, we get so stagnant, we get creaky, we start to say, oh, we're getting old or whatever. And instead, maybe we just need to get out and move. And maybe we need to get out and move as a group. And maybe we need to communicate in different places, that other than just in the cubicles at work or in the offices, the meeting rooms and things like that. And maybe we do need to, when we have a meeting at work, take time to take some breaths and breathe together or something,
Breathe and not be afraid to reveal, because burnout happens. Burnout happens because of multiple things. Number one for me was my inner critic.
Yeah.
I was unconscious. I was super unconscious about how much my inner critic was burning up my energy.
Yeah.
I was doubting myself. I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. And then the more hours I worked, telling myself I needed to work harder, the less efficient I got, the more my inner critic would just be like, you're failing, man. You're not doing enough. You got to work harder. You're not smart enough. And so this is a vicious cycle. And then we don't have enough time to work out. Then we lose the endorphins. We don't have the dopamine release. We start getting depressed. And then before we know it, we're working long hours. The to-do list just gets longer and longer. And we're crawling out of the office at the end of the day or finishing our day at work if it's at home and just feeling like, why do I want to do this? I don't want to get up tomorrow morning. If that sounds familiar to anybody, then you're edging into burnout, if not already being burnt from burnout.
I want to ask you this. You mentioned the inner critic. How do you deal with the inner critic?
Well, let's talk. Let's talk to your inner critic. Do you have an inner critic, Joel?
Of course I do. He's talking to me all the time. I've gotten so I have this relationship with him where I'm like, oh, there he shows up. He shows up before I go to do stand-up. He shows up when I'm acting, before I go to do a scene or something like that. He's always got something to say. And I feel like from what I've understand, he's trying to protect me, but he doesn't necessarily know what's good for me and what's not good for me. So I constantly have to prove him wrong, but he always shows up.
Do you have a name for this inner critic, Joel?
I call him Downer Rat.
Downer Rat. Okay.
Downer Rat.
And so Downer Rat.
Yeah.
What's like a common thing that Downer Rat tells you?
He tells me that I'm not prepared. You didn't prepare for this. It's not going to go well. What happens if, he's got a lot of what happens if you can't think of a question to ask Yancy and then you guys are just sitting there. He says these things to me or like, oh, you didn't do enough work before the show or, he's always, mainly it's about preparation and then also about how I'm going to somehow fail myself. And it's good. I'm going to be embarrassed. Yeah.
Yeah. So Joel, I really appreciate you sharing Downer Rat with us. We could go down this rabbit hole with Downer Rat a little further. And what I want to be conscious of is the time. And so one thought that I'm having you ask, how do you deal with the inner critic? Mm-hmm. So you have a name for your inner critic, which is great. You're aware of some of the things that you're telling yourself, which is important. Yeah. Now it's time to give Downer Rat a different job. So Downer Rat is super critical, highly detailed, not hesitant to point things out. So now the opportunity is to shift. And if you want to pull up another one of those shift cards, the one that's orange, the first pulled up,
let's do it.
Kind of yellowish, not really orange, but yellowish. The shift that you want to do is start to shift from criticism to actually appreciating yourself. So instead, what would you appreciate? Like, what's something you could appreciate about yourself today with this show in regards to being prepared?
I think the consistency of the show, that I'm very consistent and I've done this show many times. So, and it's usually pretty successful. So, it kind of proves a little bit of that wrong, that I actually know what I'm doing. Yeah.
So Downer Rat is like, you're not prepared. You're not going to do this well. And yet the reality is that you've been doing this enough that you're already prepared from your experiences. And also how prepared can you be for all the unknowns that are going to happen?
Right.
So appreciating yourself for how things are going, for being in the flow, for taking time to breathe, for providing all these people, 214 people out there that are learning about techniques to reduce stress and overwhelm and burnout and getting healthier. So the way to shift from your inner critic is, one, to have a name and build a relationship, appreciate the inner critic for showing up, but to shift into ways you can appreciate yourself. So one thing you could do each night is to think of 5 things you can appreciate about yourself. And if you have a spouse or a loved one, you can actually ask that person to witness you appreciating yourself in front of them, and then challenge them to do the same. Because when we are spending most of our time and looking for what's wrong,
Yeah.
It it's easy to constantly find more of what's wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
when we start to create a practice of looking at what's going well, what can you appreciate about yourself, what you can appreciate about others, and what you can appreciate about nature. The reason I say that we need to start with appreciating yourself is that, have you ever been the type of person who deflects an appreciation from someone else?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or like you say, somebody says, "Oh, I really liked what you just did in that scene," or whatever, and you're like, "Oh yeah, well, it sucked." Like you even tell them they're wrong.
Yeah. So the main reason we deflect is because our inner critic is quickly jumping to the forefront and saying, "Yeah, but you could have done this, this, and this better. If only you would have tried harder. If only you would have been more prepared." So noticing the deflection,
Yeah.
to overcome that, is to start first by appreciating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more that you can appreciate yourself, some people are like, "Yeah, but I'm going to have a big ego, blah, blah, blah." No, no, no. This is really about sincere appreciations of yourself. Simple things. It can be small things like, I appreciate myself for making a great quality breakfast this morning and for taking time to sit down and eat it.
Yeah.
Or, there could be bigger things that you accomplished. But learning to appreciate yourself is a first step.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can better appreciate others and notice through that lens of appreciating others. And when you notice receiving an appreciation and deflecting it,
Yeah.
don't hesitate to call it out, being like,
Yeah.
"Oh, actually, I noticed I just deflected that appreciation. Would you mind repeating it so I can actually let it absorb this time?"
I have gotten so much better at it when people
Good.
say that. And I also, because of awareness, people like you that actually point it out and so that you can become aware of it. I always wonder, like, why are we so worried about that? Do we think we're going to appear arrogant? Is that what it is? The people will be like, people want to beat us down because we're so happy.
Yeah.
What are we afraid of?
It's time to end this ancestral lineage of like, you got to work hard, you got to struggle, you got to be humble.
Yeah.
Don't, like, it's not, that's enough. I'm done. It's like, we're beating ourselves up for no reason. We're robbing ourselves from our own joy. This is the pathway to get out of burnout. Like, to me, this is one of the main things that caused burnout.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing was not being able to communicate very well. And so I was constantly concealing emotions, gossiping, talking to others, just stirring the drama triangle pot, instead of quickly expressing. Because if emotions are energy in motion,
mm-hmm.
and it's important for us to move those emotions on.
Yeah.
I'll say that one more time, because if emotions are energy in motion, most of the time we swallow them, hold them in, and it creates dis-ease. It creates tension. Anger, unexpressed anger, creates tension in the neck and the shoulders, in the jaw. And so that's one sample emotion that we have to get more in tune with in order to prevent ourselves from having burnout.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Emotions are energy in motion, and we need to allow it to move and not get it stuck.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you have a way that you like to express anger, Joel?
That I like to express anger? Wow.
I mean, in a healthy way, to move the energy of anger on.
The only way I like to express anger is if I'm playing a character. I think one of the reasons I like to act is because it gives you permission to do the things that you don't do in life. I think usually when I feel like I'm expressing anger, it's like wrong. You know what I mean? Like I'm being wrong about that, or I'm not looking at things in the positive way that I should be looking at things.
Yeah, that's another paradigm shift, that anger is a normal, healthy human emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's how we express it that needs to shift. So if I simply say, "Wow, I'm feeling angry right now," or "I'm noticing feeling triggered," that's taking responsibility for my emotion, rather than just being like, "Why the hell did you do this?" or "What's wrong with you?" or blah, 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 blaming others.
Yeah. It feels like, I think a lot of times I blame myself, for having an emotion. I'm like, why are you having this emotion? You're not supposed to be frustrated. You're not supposed to be angry.
That's downer rat. Attacking you, blaming yourself.
Yeah. And you have to give yourself permission. But, also, we don't want to hurt other people. that are around us. Then I feel like I'm holding myself back sometimes because I don't want to hurt other people with my own.
We don't have control over that, Joel. We don't have control over whether or not we're going to hurt someone else by just simply saying, hey, I'm feeling triggered right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's more important than continuing to swallow that emotion. So this is a complex one that we could get into more deeply with more time. But the important thing is to recognize that anger puts you into action. Anger is having a healthy way to express your anger, whether it's yelling into a pillow, or I love to yell underwater, or certain ways in which, like, if we can just fake it, be like, ah.
I had this experience at work where they called us into a thing to tell us that they were like reducing our pay, and it's a long story, but they were doing something at work or whatever. And then I expressed that I didn't think that was a good idea because it really helped our department to have, like, it was basically triple time for holidays. And I said, it really helps our department because it's a 24-hour department, so that we always have people, even if it's a holiday, because they're getting paid triple time. And they didn't like that. And I ended up getting called in, and they were like acting like I had an anger issue. And so it was one of those moments where it was like, you're not allowed to be angry. And I wasn't angry. I was more like kind of nervous about expressing it. And I think I got kind of flushed. Yeah. So I think sometimes in society, we're kind of, taught not to have emotions, especially in the workplace.
In the workplace, it might not feel appropriate to say I feel angry, but you can definitely tune into what your sensations are. Is like, I'm feeling some tension in my jaw, some tension in my neck, and something doesn't feel right about this. And I'm wondering, can we explore this in a conversation?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess maybe there's a way to express it. This is it's so layered. There's so many different ways we can talk about this. I'm going to have to come down there to Puerto Rico. So get the room ready. I think all our hummingbirds are going to have to come down there. But today we're going to have to end the show, unfortunately. Yeah. What'd you say?
We have the hummingbird room.
The hummingbird room. You have a hummingbird room?
Yep. We have a blissful
butterfly
room. We have a whole bunch of, every room has a nature spirit theme.
I love it. How expensive is a retreat? Oh, well, I think you can find it on the website, right?
On the website, they start at $525 a night, and that includes all the meals. It includes the nature adventures, the morning movement class, the room, and the guided experience.
Okay. And can you come down for any length of time, or do you have like particular workshops, or how does it work?
Well, there are themed retreats that people can sign up for, or people can book their own individual or solo retreat. And you just go online, look at the retreat section, and there are rooms that you select and see which ones are available. There's a calendar there that shows the availability. If we have a full house retreat already happening, that'll be blocked out on the calendar. Otherwise, there are openings for people to book.
Wow, that's great. Okay, so thank you so much, Yancy, for being on the show. I really appreciate it. This has been so helpful. If anybody, of course, the website is Casa Alternavida.com, which I'm going to put on the screen now. This has been a wealth of information. I know I feel better just hanging out virtually. Let me do this. Alternavida. I'm known for spelling things wrong.
Thank you for your time, Joel. I really appreciate what you're doing with this podcast. It's important. And
thanks.
I look forward to hosting you down here sometime soon. We can do another show.
I do too. Cool. Yeah, we can do another show from there, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that'd be great. And thanks everybody for being here. Now we're going to, of course, have our dance break. We're going to dance it out. I've got a song from the 80s that we actually had a cover song of it a couple of weeks ago. We're going to do it again with a different artist. Are you familiar with the artist Gary Newman, the song Cars? Have you ever heard of it? You might recognize it. Are you ready to dance? Do you dance down there? You can dance while sitting. You can dance while standing, whatever you want to do.
Static dance on the rooftop under the stars.
All right. I love it. I love it. Dancing is huge. All right, here we go. Dance break. So this is a guy named Music Arbiter. Music Arbiter.
safest of all. I can lock all my doors. It's the only way to live in cars. Here in my car, I can only receive. I can listen to you. It keeps me stable for days and cars.
Thanks everybody for being here. Let's see, Howard Aronin was here. Yeah, here in my car. Tina Adams. Yeah. Player One. Chuck Goldsmith. Yeah.
Here in my car, where
Jose.
the engine breaks down, will you visit
Anger
me,
is a
please?
feeling.
If I open my door,
Say, I feel
in
angry.
cars. Here in my car, I know I've started to think about leaving tonight.
This guy's
although
good.
Nothing seems right in cars.
All right, everybody. Thanks, Todd Lee, for joining us from the slopes and for hooking us up with Yancy. All right. We'll see you next Tuesday. This has been Lunch Therapy.
Thanks, Joel.